Dhalamina, Assalamu alaikum, Namaste, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to, of course, firstly acknowledge the head of the school management, the board, the committee, all the other invited guests, but more importantly, of course, the students and the parents of the students. Ladies and gentlemen, these occasions aren't occasions to make long speeches, but essentially to give importance in this particular case to acknowledge the Eid that's just been celebrated, and of course we're celebrating that again today. And perhaps a bit more importantly for the students is the investiture ceremony for all those who will become prefects in their schools. And none of this is actually possible without the support of the community. None of it is possible without the support of the parents, of course the teachers themselves. I think many a times a lot of parents forget that the people who have the most influence on students are the teachers themselves. They probably spend about 8 hours in a day with the teachers. But it does not mean, therefore, the parents should not have an influence, nor should the parents actually be negligent of what they need to imbibe in their children themselves. Today we see a number of challenges, in particular in schools. And once these children actually grow up and go to high school, the fact that we have technology so easily available, we have Facebook, we have text messages, we have free talk time, etc. That has an enormous influence on how people interact with each other. And therefore it is very important at the primary school level in particular that they have a very good foundation in terms of their learning, in terms of the literacy and numeracy, but also in terms of the values and principles that these students need to learn now. And discipline, of course, is critically important in all of this. If we see these young children sitting in front of us, most of whom aren't listening to what I'm saying because they're not really interested, they in fact they're like sponges. And when you have sponges, they'll soak anything around them. If they're brought up in an environment where parents are swearing, or the elders are swearing around them, they'll learn the swear words really quickly. If they're brought up in an environment where people are treated with each other with respect, with love, with compassion, with friendliness, with a zeal or earnestness to learn, they will do the same too. So it is critically important for the teachers, for the parents, and the community itself to ensure that when we are around young children, we behave in a particular manner that not only will mean that they will develop good habits, good values, good principles, but also have a critical mind in terms of thinking and questioning. Today, most of you, I see the people who are adults here, most of you are all over the age of 40. Today, 70% of the Fijian population is below the age of 40. 65% of the population, about 62 to 65%, of the population are below the age of 35. So all of you over the age of 35 and over the age of 40, you're in the minority. It's these young people who will actually become very quickly, within a blink of an eye, they'll become leaders. The students who are in high school at the moment will very soon hold positions of influence, positions of power, positions of change. So it is very important for us also as adults to be able to learn to respect them, to be able to share our knowledge with them, and to ensure that if we are able to do that, we'll be able to create a lot better Fiji and a more improved Fiji for all of us. I'd like to, of course, also urge the parents that those of you whose children, in fact, are getting, being made prefects today through this investiture ceremony, please provide them guidance. Please ensure that they are responsible in the roles that they are being given to them. We have sometimes children who may not necessarily, come to school on time or may not necessarily take their responsibilities seriously. It's the parents' job to do that. It's not just only the teachers. And I also would like to acknowledge teachers. I've always said to people that, I would never want to be a primary school teacher because it's such an enormous responsibility. It's responsibility not just in terms of teaching, but responsibility because a teacher can have enormous influence as to what their child will become when they become an adult, what they will turn out to be. because it's those early years of learning that has a huge impact on what they and how they'll turn out to be adults. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to, of course, thank the committee and the school for the invitation. I remember this place many years ago when I was very young. My father's sister used to live right up at the last cane farm, up on the hill. And so it was a big adventure for us to come to this area because the shower, they used to take out the water from the well. They had corrugated tin, which was like the pipe, and that's where you had the shower. So I still remember this place, Mulomulo, for that. And, you know, schools like this have been built by the people who've lived in this area. And if you see schools around Fiji, in particular in many of the rural areas, they were built by people who themselves weren't necessarily very well educated, but they recognized the importance of education. And I think the placing the emphasis on education laid the foundations for a modern Fiji state. I mean, the Fijian state actually could not be where it is today if we did not have these schools. And I think it would be amiss of me also not to mention Girmit. As you know, we had celebrated the Girmit on 14th of May, which of course happens to be coincidentally the anniversary of the first coup in Fiji. But the Girmit itself, actually, if you look at the people who are the Girmitiers, they themselves, most of them were illiterate people who only knew how to work the fields and who only knew hard work. A lot of them, of course, during the Girmit time were whipped, women were raped, there was abuse of people. All of that happened. And unfortunately, that part of our history has been very much hidden away from mainstream education. And we need to be able to highlight those issues so people are able to deal with their past so we can have a better future. It also helps people understand what's the psychology of where they're coming from. That's critically important. In the same way, many people do not know in Fiji that during the Girmit time, the British had actually passed ordinances that made it illegal for people living in Itoke villages to give refuge to people who ran away from the Girmit. It became an illegal act to give them refuge. So there are many things that are not taught. Many people don't know that we had one of the chiefs who went to New South Wales and came back and he had measles. And as a result of that, about 30 to 40,000 Itoke people died as a result of measles in the late 1800s. So all of this part of our history is not taught. Many people don't know that. We need to be able to mainstream this type of information and knowledge. And therefore, getting back to the early pioneers, if they actually had not set up the culture and not relying on education to find a way out of poverty, many of us still would be stuck in that space. So I think we need to acknowledge people who run these committees, who run these schools. Government now, of course, is providing completely free education. All the schools, in fact, in Fiji are funded by government. We pay the school fees. Parents no longer have to pay school fees. They no longer have to provide for textbooks. Those who live or have a particular level of income, we provide subsidized bus fares. All the teachers in Fiji, their salaries are paid by government. And it is the largest ministry in respect of the outlay of government budgeting. And of course, today we have where we provide TELs. Students who leave high school, they want to go to universities, they either get a tertiary education loan, or alternatively, if they get high marks in particular areas, we give them a scholarship. So we have a whole system that's been built in to ensure that we get the best out of these young people who are indeed our leaders for future. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much to all those who've been involved in this organization. And I think probably the last thing I should mention is Eid. As highlighted by Kalera in her speech, Eid, of course, it marks the end of Ramadan. And as I mentioned to some people a few weeks ago, Ramadan is not only about not eating from sunrise to the sunset. It's about eating very little. It's about thinking about people who are poor. Unfortunately, nowadays, a lot of people, they break their fast with Coca-Cola or Pepsi, or they break their fast with fried food, fried dalo, cassava, or, meatballs. But the whole purpose of fasting is that even when you break your fast, even when you eat in the morning, is to eat with a lot of restraint. And it's not only about cleansing the body physically, it's about cleansing your heart and your mind and your soul in that month of Ramadan. It's about learning to restrain yourself.
It's about controlling yourself, controlling your urges. You know, sometimes when we are in normal times, something happens, you get angry and you may say something. The whole idea of Ramadan is that in that month you reflect to control your anger, control your urges, be nice to other people. This is why during the month of Ramadan, everybody goes around collecting charity, because they know people will want to donate, because they want to earn points. At the end of the day, we all live on this planet Earth, and we all are accountable to our Creator. That's the most basic thing. We have to understand that. Today we are here, today we may not be here. And if we are not here tomorrow, then how will we be answerable to our Creator? Very fundamental basis of life. A lot of people will go to the mosque or the church or the temple and they'll say their prayers, whether it's once a week, whether it's every day, whether it's 5 times a day, whether it's every 2 days. But there'll be the people who may be giving bribes, taking bribes, being racist, being religiously chauvinist, and they don't see the contradiction. But there's an enormous contradiction. If you believe in God, if you believe God is our Creator, God created all human beings. All human beings are equal in the eyes of God. We're all God's children. So therefore, even though somebody may be of a different ethnicity or different faith or from a different province or different district, whatever it is, we should not fundamentally discriminate against anybody. We should not be unjust to people. We need to be fair. We need to treat people with justice. We need to treat people with compassion. And we're beginning to lack a lot of compassion. People, you know, there's a saying, do unto others as you like them to do unto you. Very basic thing, but a lot of people don't practice it. Easy to say it, not necessarily easy to do it. So these are the very fundamental things that we are supposed to reflect upon in the month of Ramadan. And then once a year, you know, it's like, what do you do? Engine overhaul. You engine overhaul not just your body, but also your heart and your mind and your soul. And Eid, of course, marks the culmination or the end of the month of Ramadan, where you celebrate with all those you know, your friends, family, neighbors. And the idea is to have an open house. And it's all about humanity. It's all about, you know, being good to your fellow human beings. And I'm sure that this is the spirit that this school and this community will be engendering in time of now and, of course, in the future. Thank you once again. Thanks.